What it takes to get to Beijing. After a swimming accident in Turkey, Torben Bröer had to give up his two passions, motocross and the marathon. In breaking his neck, he is quadriplegic, Torben's life took an unexpected turn that he had to learn to deal with at first. But having always been enthusiastic about sports, the shift from motorbike to hand cycle proved to be a small one. Torben did not spend a day longer in hospital than needed.
Mit der Sache beschäftigt ist eigentlich schon, sagen wir mal...
Well, I started thinking about it about 1 month after the accident. That was 2.5 years ago. That's when I actually made up my mind about taking up the hand cycle, as I used to run the marathon before. I was familiar with the Handcyclists. They would always start before the runners. I was also lucky to start from the front, where you have a pretty good view of the guys. So to me it was obvious. I wasn't about to give up. I always knew I would move on. I'd actually already ordered my first hand cycle from my hospital bed.
It's
of course a great pleasure to work with somebody like that, not only for the therapists. Apart from the therapeutic work at the hospital ward, the other patients also benefit from his presence. The motivated and active patients like Torben clearly have a positive impact on the others. That's why such athletes are not only ambassadors for their sport, but also provide great role models for an active way of life.
Reißen einfach andere Patienten mit und beeinflussen die einfach positiv.
Torben's rehabilitation took place in Boberg, Germany. Dr. THIETJE likes to remember patients such as him. They present sport in the most motivating and credible way. Like here, during a clinic tour where top athletes with a disability introduce their sport and show others that life can still go on after an accident. In the process, Paralympic sport can provide a key to an independent, everyday life. It's not just about the direct and immediate sense of well-being. It's more about believing in yourself and gaining self-confidence. As a rule, people who do sports are also more active and successful in their everyday life. Torben has qualified for his first Paralympics just 2 years after taking up hand cycling. It's not a one-man show. He had lots of support from other hand cyclists who taught him everything he needed to know. I was very fortunate to have met Stefan Lange during my stay in hospital. He's a physiotherapist and sports teacher who is successful at hand cycling. I could learn from him right away. Plus, I got to meet all the other professionals in this area and became part of the team pretty fast. They accepted me and took care of me right from the start. They made it really easy for me in a lot of ways. I didn't have to look for any supporting institutions and so on. The guys were just there for me from the get-go, and sure, that was perfect. Now he's part of a professional team, equipped with what he needs to do in the sport. At the end of last year I got the chance, that's how I see it, to be part of Team Sopor. In my opinion, the most professional team in the world, led by Errol Marklein. He used to be the best hand cyclist and wheelchair racer, and I was lucky to have the opportunity to join the team. That alone helped me tremendously throughout this year. It's one of the secrets as to why I'm advancing so well at the moment. In Kaltenkirchen, close to Torben's home, the team meets regularly to prepare for the upcoming competitions. Here they can ride on the open road, with beautiful landscapes and fresh air. Of course, training together is also more entertaining. They have a good time and save energy riding in each other's slipstream. Today, Torben prepares for the Hamburg Marathon, together with Vico Merklein and Thomas Lange. Apart from covering the required distance, they practice tactics just like able-bodied cyclists. For Torben, it's not always easy to keep up with his teammates. He's a quadriplegic in Class A, but his average speed is some 6 miles per hour slower than his colleagues in B and C classes. As there are not many active cyclists in Class A, this training is a great opportunity for Torben to learn team tactics, even though his needs differ from his colleagues. For instance, Torben uses real power in watts and not pulse rate to measure his performance. Besides the obvious restrictions of my class, there's also the inability to sweat. I know it sounds strange at first, and it is. Not a drop of sweat comes out of these pores. Plus, my heart rate is inhibited by the autonomic nervous system, meaning that my pulse can only get up to a maximum of 125. That's why I don't use it to measure my performance. Normally, every endurance sport measures the heart rate. For a smooth race, it goes up to 140, and for a speedy one, up to 170. That's the traditional way of organizing your workout. I can't do that, as my active rate only goes up to 125, whereas my resting rate is at 48-50, leaving a too narrow scale for adjustment during training. My training schedule was developed by the Sports Academy in Cologne. It really works wonders, as it was not possible for me to train using heart rate. But this is really the key to success. Beijing is just around the corner, and Torben wants to know where he stands. A performance test in Cologne allows him to optimize his training schedule. Dominic Bonin, who also knows Torben from day one, is supervising the test. First up is endurance. Dominic Bonin adjusts the instruments to measure oxygen and lactate. This establishes the acidity of Torben's muscles. For this purpose, Torben has to crank things up, while wattage is gradually increased by 10 at a time. At some point, Torben's body begins to produce more lactate, also known as lactic acid, than oxygen. The so-called anaerobic metabolism is reached when the body cannot produce enough oxygen to supply the muscles. Dominic Bonin uses a monitor constantly to check Torben's values and condition. If the red line were to rise above the blue line, then you would have an anaerobic metabolism situation. That's a condition you cannot keep up for too long. The level displayed by the watt indicator increases, just like Torben's body temperature. His arms start hurting a little bit more with every turn. But the major difficulty results not from lack of fitness or incorrect pacing, but rather his inability to sweat as a tetraplegic.
I have
to carry water with me in a special backpack. I spray my skin with it, and that does the sweating for me. Evaporation and transpiration takes place, albeit artificially. When temperatures reach 30 or 35 degrees centigrade, 80 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm in trouble. But up to then, I can keep things stable. It's quite a challenge.
Komm, weiter dranbleiben. Gleichmäßig weiter, komm. Ne? Okay.
At 90 watts, Torben has to call it a day. Being a perfectionist, he's not happy about it. Still, after doing his best during the test, he's not completely worn out, which bodes well for the final test. But first, he has to cool down. The thing is, you're not exhausted after such a test. It used to be that you give all you have, then you're totally worn out. It's not like that anymore. During this test, Torben has to give his all over a period of 20 seconds to determine his maximum potential in watts.
20 Sekunden lang Vollgas. Das Kommando gilt. Ready, set, go. Und komm. Geh. Los! Weiter.
Das reicht noch lange nicht, Mensch. Mach weiter.
10 Sekunden.
Weiter. Zieh. Mehr. Komm. Du kannst noch ein bisschen.
Komm.
Du kannst noch was. Los, du kannst noch was.
Weiter, komm.
Tom, reiß dich zusammen. Los, gib mehr.
Okay, stopp. Super.
Weiter war das.
644 watts, superb, a really good amount. Torben's body is ready for Beijing. But during the showdown, other aspects will be decisive when it comes to victory or defeat. That's why, in the run-up, Torben tries to take part in as many races as possible, such as at the KOBERLE Marathon in Hamburg. The Hamburg Marathon is one in a series of city marathons throughout Germany. The races match the Paralympic distance of 26 miles. It's almost impossible to win this series on your own. It's similar to the Tour de France road race. Use of slipstreams and team coordination with clearly defined tasks to get individual riders into the best position to win. But it will be different in Beijing, where A-class cyclists will only take part in an individual time trial. Preparations for an individual time trial are much easier. You don't have to worry about tactics and arrangements of the opposing team or of the other nations. In an individual time trial, it's you against the clock. Therefore, my training clearly focuses on speed, endurance and power, nothing else. Sounds nice and simple, no worries about tactics, especially for a rookie like me. Up to now, we've taken part in fewer than 10 races where I've had to think about tactics, so individual time trials are clearly easier for me, as I'm not that familiar with the other races. Handcyclists from all over Europe take part in this series of marathon races. An open road, thousands of spectators and prize money, great conditions. And that's why they live and love the sport. Yet the results are not what Team So Poor had hoped for in Hamburg. Only Edward MAALOUF in the B-class manages to win. The C-class cyclist Vico Merklein has to settle for third, and Torben for second in the A-class, losing to his biggest rival, Wolfgang Schattauer.
My competitor was Stefan Baumann, and all of the other Group C groups. Last year I was the winner here, so I tried this year to win from all, but it was a tough group. Everybody was good prepared. So, but I'm glad that I won my division.
Eigentlich war es super, aber
it actually went pretty well. My unofficial goal was to annoy Mr. Schattauer, but at kilometer 3, I was daydreaming for a moment, and he used someone else's slipstream, and he was gone. He's been part of it all for so long, I couldn't catch up with him. But if it's true that he did a 121 or a 120 and I did a 127, well then I guess there's not much I can do. Right now there's nobody who's a threat in my class. Last year at the World Championships I was 10 minutes faster than Torben, over 6 miles. But he's clearly improved since then. In Beijing, it's all up in the air. Besides, the first Paralympics are a very emotional and individual experience, and will certainly compensate Torben for the pain and the tears. He's already accomplished one thing. He's a role model representing the power and possibilities of sport, like many others here in Hamburg. I'm now dedicating myself to working more with young people. I train them, and I really enjoy it. It's so important that people with disabilities get some exercise, become active, no matter in which sport. It's really crucial for everyday life. It enables them to endure more pressure and feel more at ease in general. Plus, there's also the aspect of integration when you're among the 23,000 runners at the starting line. In my opinion, sport should be the #1 thing for everybody. It makes you achieve goals and compensates for many other things. That's why already during the rehab, I felt I had to keep going. And that's how I approached having a broken neck. I said to myself, you have to see it as a sportsman. When running a marathon halfway through the distance, you think to yourself, the glass is half full and not half empty.